How's it going? I'm former Toronto radio personality Rob Daniels here with my good buddy Ryan May, who's been in touch with me for a few years over social media, and we're going to do a little interview for his class, and they'll be stoked and all want to work in radio after they hear about this. Hopefully, that's the goal.
Alright, so let's get right into it. What part of the entertainment industry did you work in?
Mainly radio, a brief little stint in TV, but I'm a radio guy at Ryan. Yeah.
How many different stations have you worked for?
I would have to say, including my high school station and college station, probably about 7 or 8 across Canada.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Takes you around quite a bit, yeah. It's very few that only work at one in their career, and if they do, then that's, I mean, they're probably making really good money, and they're a staple at that radio station, right?
Maybe like Bob McCowan on Fan 590.
Exactly, Bob McCowan or Roger Ashby.
Yeah.
Right?
What are some skills a person has to have to be successful in radio?
You have to be a people person all the time. You gotta be upbeat. You gotta want to do a show. You have to, even when you're having a bad day, you have to try and entertain your listeners as best as possible. And the show must go on. Just like, you know, if you're to watch a play, you have to realize those people are people too, right? When you go and watch a Lion King play, and they have to perform night after night. They may have had, you know, a bad day just like you did, and they have to just roll with it, and realize that this is how they make their living. And but at the end of the day, it's really about the customer, and the customer is the listener, and you have to try and entertain and realize that they are the reason why you have this job, because you're sitting behind the board, and everything is ratings, right? If you don't get a certain amount of ratings, then you're only as good as your rating. So you have to thank your listeners and always be appreciative of them listening. Otherwise, you know, it's because of them that you're there.
Show must go on, I guess.
Yeah.
What, if any, schooling did you have to work in the radio industry?
Radio industry for schooling. I went to
started high school.
Yes, high school radio station. We were talking about that earlier when I first met you. RAV FM. It's radio at Vaughan Secondary School in Thornhill, the town that you and I are both from, and it's a great
and everyone
school.
in the video.
And everyone in the video, yeah. And it's a great town, great school, Vaughan Secondary, and that's where I started. And from there, I went to Seneca College at York University. They had a radio program there, and I took their 2-year diploma program. Yeah, it was good.
Is it difficult to enter radio?
Yes, because you have to figure out, everybody needs a starting point, right? Where are you going to get your first start? That's the whole question, right? Like, everybody needs a place to start. If that's at the bottom, I was willing to do that. And basically, if someone gives you that shot, then you have a chance to try and climb that ladder and be a sponge in the environment you are working in, right? So I got my start by having an internship at a radio station, but I would call KISS, the first incarnation, I would call the studio as many times as I could, just like you would
Sounds
try.
like someone I know.
Yeah, I would call as many times as I could, but I would call not for the average reason to make a request. I called because I wanted to speak to the DJ and help out with whatever he needed announced on the air. I would do that, but I would also ask if I could hand in a resume. I would work for free, and finally they let me up, and that was sort of how I got my start, and one thing led to another.
When you go into work at a radio station, what would be a typical day? Like, walk us through a day.
So if I were to be on the air, let's say when I was at KISS, I was on a lot 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. on the weekends. So my weekends were always eaten up. It was like pretty much dedication of the whole weekend was dedicated to radio. So I would be, I would live in the Vaughan area, but the stations were flagship right in the Yonge and Bloor area. Yeah. So I would have to make the 40-minute drive on the weekends, so that takes a little bit out of your day, and then I would so really I would start prepping at about 10 in the morning or so, show prep at home. So you're constantly going over what's new and what's happening in show business and entertainment entertainment and just current events within Toronto, and that would take me till about 11:30, 12 noon. I'd have lunch with my wife. You'd hang around the house, do your chores, but the next thing you know, it's already 2:30, 2:45, and you have to make that 40-minute drive in, and it's already 4 p.m. and there is traffic still on the weekend, so you got to give yourself enough time. And 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. it pretty much takes up your whole weekend. And the same thing would happen when I was on Virgin. It was 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. would be an 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. day because of sitting at home. You're up on your laptop trying to figure out what's making news and what's new news, what's old news, and you have to be aware of this because that's what the format is current radio, right? So it's a typical day of show prep and doing your show. Sometimes you'd have to do voice work. They call you in and say, hey, Rob, I need you to voice a commercial for Foot Locker. Can you come on in and do a voice work that's included in your salary that you make there, and you have to be prepared to do that after your show. Right? So,
what are your responsibilities inside the studio? What do you need to take care of while you're recording? And is it a lot of improvisation work, or is it a lot of scripting?
It's scripting. There's a little bit of everything. So there's scripting. If you want to script some breaks, what I used to do is I would write out a lot of the talk time, like the longer times. If I had to talk for about 40 seconds at one point, those are the ones I was going to write out mostly. But if I only talked for a good 10 seconds, I just did a quick point form note or something. What else were you asking me? Yeah, basically in the control room, social media is a big thing. So you have to always, you have to be all over social media, and sort of whatever you're doing on the air has to be associated with online a lot of the times now. So they consider it now our second microphone. So we have a microphone that goes out to the world on the internet and on the airwaves, but social media is your second microphone. You're speaking with listeners, you're treating them just like you would on the air. So it's a second platform to interact with listeners. So you're always doing social media, you're editing phone calls, you're taking live phone calls, you're preparing your breaks, you're talking. So there's multitasking like crazy.
Like a lot to juggle.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part about being in radio?
Favorite part of it?
Best thing that you got to do?
I don't know. I never. It's a difficult question to answer. I think I just loved the job because I loved creating the break. There's nothing like talking in your headphones and hearing like a great top 40 intro, like if you hear the Armin van Buuren now, or if you hear Avicii and there's a lead up to like 14 seconds, and if you're talking in front of your whole city and you're talking about something that's relevant and you just hit that post, and it's just the post meaning like that intro before the song time hits, it's just there's nothing better than that feeling like you're talking about something relevant. You picture that the city's listening to, even though they're not, maybe they are, but you have this amazing song that you love blaring in your headphones, and you're talking over this in front of the city that you want to be in, and that's what I missed about it. And creating great radio, also making the listener the star. So if you hear a lot of the winners on the air, that's like my favorite thing in the world, is to hear excitement. What I always used to do was to say, congratulations, you're going to Cancun, Mexico, and I wouldn't say a thing for the next like 20 seconds because I just wanted to hear the listener react and let them do whatever they want, because the listener is the star, so they have to let them react. If you don't give them any reaction time, then it's takes away from the good radio. What you want for the good radio is listener reaction and make sure that they're the one that sounds the most excited. We've got to be on that same excitement level, but don't cut them off and let them say what they need to say. So being in that big conversation with them when they win something is definitely huge, right? Because you want to make it bigger than it really is, and that's a theater of the mind aspect again too, right? Yeah.
So me and my partner named Ellie, not able to be here.
Yeah.
But we read an article by CTV News about something new coming out called iTunes Radio.
Yeah.
It may be coming to Canada soon, and it led me to wonder: do you think it's possible that internet radio could take over or best the standard radio industry?
It's hard to fully answer that question. What I can tell you is that people say radio is dying, which it is, but because of all these new mediums, but I don't think it'll ever go away. It can't, because people miss that local angle. You can't just turn everything into the internet where it's everything. People still want to know what's going on in Toronto or in Barrie or in Montreal. They want some sort of local feeling to their city, and you can't take like a News Talk 1010 and put that on the internet when they're everything to do with Toronto, the mayor, issues with the city and the streets and the construction. You're not necessarily going to get that on internet, radio or satellite per se. Local radio is still king, especially in the smaller towns. Like when you go to like Kingston, they want that one-on-one connection. And when I was in Montreal too, they want stuff that people know about Montreal mentioned on the air. They're not too into hearing about what's going on in Toronto when you're in Montreal, and vice versa, right? It's just the nature of the competition in the cities. But I think it'll still survive, but there's definitely some serious competition to look out for. So, yeah.
Well, we found another article. I know it's not necessarily your field, politics, but there's been complaints about Rob Ford's radio show. There's been some talking points that haven't necessarily been the most favorable to everybody else.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, like, what topics in radio should be avoided, and if they aren't avoided, how should they be dealt with?
Okay, so if they're not avoided, so the question is, how should they be avoided?
Yeah,
like certain topics?
Yeah, how should certain topics be avoided in radio? What are some of them?
What are some of them? Well, yeah, like you got to be really careful how you talk about the Rob Ford situation on an adult contemporary station and a rock station, as opposed to a news station. Like a news station is going to give you a whole bunch of facts and speak publicly, like they're going to address the situation differently than, let's say, like a Virgin Radio. Virgin and Kiss will maybe make light of the situation and make fun of something that happened with Rob Ford, whereas the news station will give you the facts and here's what we found in the video, but the Top 40 station will find an interesting twist to sort of make a catchy, creative joke about it while stating the fact.
Opinion.
Yeah, almost. Exactly. Yeah, okay. Exactly. Yeah.
Earlier this week, we found another article. This one was about the whole Stephen Harper controversy with the two senators who've been causing problems, and it kind of made me think, in what ways, like, can publicity be good for people, and in what ways can it really not help them at all?
Well, yeah, it's in the Rob Ford situation is sort of like the catch-22 of that. Like, I guess this whole situation that he's going through with being caught in the video smoking something. We don't know what it was. No, there hasn't been proof stated yet, but it's definitely lots of evidence showing that he has smoked crack cocaine, but we don't know for sure. But that kind of stuff, you put that in the news, it's damaging for anybody's public figure, right? Like, it's
City of Toronto even.
Yeah, like to have that as the mayor, like, it's sort of like this is where publicity is damaging for him, because it's showing that he's a public figure. He is the mayor of our city, but look what he's doing. Is he smoking crack cocaine? He's just got to really watch. He has to realize that he's in the public eye a lot of the time, which is, unfortunate if you don't want that. But he has to realize you signed up for that when you took the job, right? So there's negative and positive. There's good things he does do too that gets publicized. Some people don't. But whether he goes out, I don't know. I saw him on that. He goes out to pick up garbage with the public on these special days when it's Clean Up Earth Day and stuff. These small things, but I still don't think that cleans up his act completely. But I see him trying. But again, I don't follow it enough too much to know if he should be in in the mayor's chair or not, I don't really have a formed opinion on it, because I probably should follow it better myself, but I can't form an opinion on it, unfortunately, at this time. Yeah.
So, is a radio career very demanding? And if it is, how do you balance it with your social life and everything going on?
It's very demanding, because you're always thinking about it, because everything is your work life. Like, I mean, as much as I don't know so much about Rockport, I still have to know a little bit about politics, a little bit about everything. Everything is your show prep, everyday life. So me talking with you tonight could be something I talk about on the air the next day and realize, hey, you know what, thanks so much. I was out with Ryan May the other night. We were at Tim Hortons and we were chatting about radio, what a great guy he is, and I just want to say hi to him and his family, and thanking them so much for always being an avid listener of KISS 92.5, right? Like, if you were to say that becomes a small show prep thing that you can use over 18 seconds of an LMFAO song if you wanted to talk about it, and that becomes show prep, right? So show prep is like 24/7, right? It could be something that happened at the movies the other night. You went to the movies and you saw a great movie, or it could be something where you were stuck in traffic and the guy wasn't going on an advanced green light and it got you pissed off. What should we do about Toronto traffic? Is it getting that bad to the point that we need to actually do something about it? Anything can be show prep, right? Or you were at a bar mitzvah the other day, maybe something happened there funny you want to share. Anything, right? So you have to sort of take mental notes when you're on the air and living your personal life too, right? So it's going back to, if it's demanding, sure, but it's a fun demanding, because if you love it, then it just becomes a part of your second nature. And I balance it with social life by still living a social life, but I take the mental notes if I can. But you never really turn off the working brain. It's always there, because you always want to have something to use for work, right? So,
an article I read recently on Billboard.com, it was talking about there's a new legislation coming out that very much affects radio. It's called the Mel Watt Performance Right Legislation, and it's going to give, instead of just the songwriters, the artists are going to get royalties from their songs being played on the radio. And I wondered, why are the songwriters not recognized as much as the artists? And did you ever talk about the songwriters when you were in radio?
Yeah, I think it's just maybe in smaller towns they talk about songwriters more because they have more time to speak. But I think now in Toronto radio, because a lot of it where you've been listening from and what you're used to is very time condensed radio. So we have like 8 seconds to talk about something. We don't even have time sometimes to even talk about the artist, because you'll just say, Virgin Radio, DVP closed this weekend in both directions thanks to construction. What else is new? And then that's it. And then the song starts playing, because you literally have 8 seconds to talk, right? Sometimes you don't even say the artist. So I think it's the time condensing that really gets away from not letting you say more than just the artist. I do talk about songwriters if they have something to do with the artist that's playing, like, let's say, if The Weeknd is writing material for Drake, or Drake and vice versa, or Neo, for instance, who you hear on the air, he's written so many songs for so many artists. I have mentioned that tons of times before when I was on KISS.
Okay.
So it does here and there. It just depends on how much time you have.
Yeah. So when you got into radio, past your college degree, what was the first major station you worked at, or the first major thing in broadcasting that you did?
So it was probably when I was literally the youngest person to turn on a microphone and be on the air at 104.5 Channel FM in Toronto. And at that time, which was 10 years ago, at that time that was a big deal, because Chum FM, and it still is like the #1 most listened to radio station in Canada as far as like the cume is concerned, for how many for their demographics that they want. They're #1 for it's a heritage radio station, and the fact I got to be a part of a great lineup of broadcasters, whether I was overnights or not, it just to walk into that control room and be on the air was the biggest. That was the first biggest thing for me ever there. So that was definitely something I didn't take for granted. I loved it. Yeah.
What led you to start a career in radio?
Probably, I'll be honest, if you like baseball.
Yeah, I like baseball.
Do you go to the Blue Jays games a lot?
Yes.
So, leading off the second for the Blue Jays, the right fielder, number 19, Jose Bautista. You know that guy?
Yeah.
I started mimicking him for like ever because I love the Jays, and I would go with my dad growing up, and I would watch, and I'd listen to, I'm like, how do I get that guy's job? And I still want that guy's job to this very day. And apparently he works like at a car dealership in the off season, and he works as, and he works this announcer's gig in the summer. So he's like doing a whole bunch of stuff, but he's got this great job that I looked up to when I was younger, and I figured, how can I get a job that's similar to this? And eventually, what really intrigued me was Kiss, because Kiss, when it first came out, was like a massive top 40 station. The DJs were the stars, and I think what really held me to that account was more than you were thinking that they were like a public figure now, like a Cash Connors or an Adam Wilde. Back when I was growing up, it was even bigger. Like, I mean, constantly around the DJs, people were getting autographs from them.
Wow.
They were really superstars like 10 years ago. Now it's still there with Kiss, and I'll admit, when we first came back, it's still popular, and you'll have tons of people coming up to Roz and Mocha for autographs and stuff. But back then, it was bigger than I had ever seen, and I wanted to be a part of that and just be on the air. I didn't care about the fame, but it felt good when you had it with me, right? It was, yeah.
What do you dislike about radio, if there's any?
What did I dislike? What I dislike about radio is that it's not really specifically. Well, the only one thing there's two things. One is that it's a very lonely business. It's like, if you don't have a family that's a big, strong support system, you are alone in a studio. And to imagine that people are listening to you is one thing, and you're performing for an audience you hope that is listening on the other end. But really, it's just you, some broadcast buttons, and the phones, social media, and you're just in a room by yourself, and hopefully there's a window there, because that's what makes you think that you're in real life, and that's what's great. But it can be lonely if you have to especially move, which a lot of people do to start off their careers, or if you're not living at home, like in your hometown, and you move across the country and you're on your own, then that's the lonely feeling is probably one of them, because then there's positives to make that diminish as a negative, right? So it's not that bad. You have to. I dealt with that, and there's just ways around it, the lonely factor. But the second thing is not radio against radio, but we talked about this when I first met you. Was Toronto radio in general, that they do take on-air talent for granted, and they treat them as if almost, I don't want to say robots, but in a sense that it's very heartless. Yeah, disposable. Anybody's replaceable in Toronto, and your feelings, you have to start developing a thick skin if you want to really make it in Toronto, because you have to deal with a lot of people stepping over you because everybody wants the same job sometimes, and it's become a very every man for themselves kind of industry in Toronto mainly. I mean, in other cities it's a lot more laid back, but Toronto, everybody wants to be here. It's like it's market number one for all of Canada, so there's just so much crazy competition, and that's the dislike, is that it gets out of hand to the point of people get let go for nothing, and it's just it shouldn't be that way. It should be, but everyone's got to stick out. So there is reasons why I can understand why radio stations do this, but at the same time I can't. Where I can understand is that it is competition, like Tim Hortons versus McDonald's. You have to figure out who's going to succeed more, and find different ways to stand out. But I still think it needs good people who sound good, who are actually good-hearted people, to be behind those broadcast buzzers, to treat the listeners right. It shouldn't just be about what kind of maybe connection you have, or basically where you are in the business to just get in, or your popularity basically to get into a station. It's got to be about who you are as a person and your sound, and if you fit that. But too much of the time in Toronto, there's a lot of politics, and people in their mind have who they want and vision on their radio station, and what they'll do is they'll walk in and they'll just cut everybody that's not a part of their plan, and they put in the people that are in place, right? Whereas in a Kingston, Ontario, a new person comes in and they're just like, hey, I'm the new guy, thanks for having me, I'm the new GM, and they just go to their office and they do their work. But in Toronto, it's an ego thing where it's like, okay, I'm the PD of this flagship radio station, I have to run the ship, and if it's going to sink, it's going to sink because of me. If I have all my people in place, I don't want it to sink because other people put in people that I didn't put in place. It's going to succeed because of me, or it's going to sink because of me, right? So that's the mentality in Toronto as opposed to other cities. So that's the two negatives, but again, every industry has their positives and negatives, and you outweigh whichever one you want to be on your side. But I'm definitely still on the positive side, and that's where you have to always be. So.
Another article going back to the internet radio kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's another service called Pandora.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, like, have you noticed a change with the internet radio becoming more and more popular while you were on air? Have you noticed a change in that?
Pandora. So not too much, because now radio stations, what they do is they, I mean, again, it's another thing that's attacking radio to try and get you away from the radio, but I don't see it killing radio, because now radio's starting to compete too with getting all these things on their websites that are digital, like download the new Eminem single on demand at our website here at 24/7 before anybody else, or so there's just a lot of content you can get on demand on station websites now that'll compete with that. And then when they have that, they'll see you noodling around on the website. Maybe you'll click the listen live button to listen to Virgin or to listen to Kiss or whichever station you're listening to. So I know stations have taken notice of the internet out there that's sort of taking them away from their listen live feature, but they compete by putting content that other people can't get there necessarily to try and get traction to the site still. So they're in natural competition. I don't think it'll kill it away, but they're in a natural competing stage. Right?
Okay. How has radio advanced from when you started to where you are now, technology-wise, business-wise, whatever?
I think it's advanced just with the internet. Yeah, the internet is and social media, and social media has really done a lot for it. I still haven't seen any proof that it's 100% increasing ratings at a radio station, but they really, I'll tell you, when I was at a station in Toronto, they really force it upon you to be avid on it. Like, we literally, as it being our second microphone, it's to the point that it's part of our job where we would get to the studio and it's like they want us to find 8 Facebook photos per show. They want 2 YouTube videos to include on all mediums, the station Twitter account, station Facebook account. They want 1 Instagram video. They want 1 Pinterest video. They want 1 blog from you. They want just so much. So this is all in excess around your show when you're show prepping, and you have to add all these. So before, back in the day, it didn't advance to that, because it was back in the day it was just a DJ sitting behind the board talking to callers on the phone, maybe spinning a few records. So I mean, it's just advanced in technology in a sense of like there's just a lot of computer work that has to be done, as opposed to back in the day there was no technology like that, and it was called reel-to-reel, where you would splice up tape with your hands, and you could probably get hurt with your hands doing it, but it was like a different method of work, as opposed to now it's all it's all in front of you on a screen, and you have to just utilize it the proper way. So it has advanced, but just by in form of computers and internet. The internet's completely taken over. Right?
So are there any parts of your career that you would do over? Maybe redone?
Not really. I like what I've done so far. I mean, I question some moves. Maybe if I would have stayed here, would I have had a better chance? I would have had a better opportunity. So that's what I'm thankful for. Now I'm just in a sense now I just want to get back in it. I don't have a place necessarily where I want it. Like I don't crave to go live in Calgary. Whereas if you asked me 7 years ago, I would have said I have this unbelievable, overwhelming feeling that I really want to live in BC. I really wanted to live in BC for some reason, and I did it, and that's just part of it. But now it's just I want to get back in and be close with family, so live closer to Toronto. But it may take a while. It may not happen ever, but you just got to never give up, right?
Hopefully it'll happen soon. And my last question. Is there any job you would rather be doing?
Is there any job?
Other than the baseball thing.
Other than the baseball thing, yeah. Radio pretty much is my first choice. If it could be something with the Toronto Blue Jays or the Montreal Canadiens, I would love that. Like,
Canadians?
Yeah, I'm a Habs fan. Yeah, oh, you're a Leafs fan. Yeah, huge Leafs fan. Well, you got to learn that when I was at Kiss. I would shove that in people's face all the time when I was a Habs fan.
Sure, Torontonians love it.
Oh yeah, they love it. Come on.
Friendly competition.
It's a friendly competition. It was good, but yeah, I mean, the way my life is here, and that it really is, that it belongs in this province and near Toronto at least. The Jays. Doing something with the Blue Jays, I can see is like I don't know what, like again, announcing. Public relations, anything with talking with customers, tickets, like sales to get them to get ticket revenue. I know I can do those jobs, but I mean, this is my first choice. Radio has always been my first choice, but I can't see myself wanting to do anything other than this. Like if it's a career and wanting to get back in, it's just I focus on this every day. Everything else is just a job, where this is like my career and my life. And it hurts me every day that I'm not in it, so I want to get back in it somehow. So it may take a while, I don't know, and you just gotta hope. Never lose hope.
All right, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, buddy. So good to finally meet you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem, Ryan.
Robbie D.
Rob Daniels, Robbie D, whatever you want to call me.
Thanks.